Mr. Block joins us now. Carson, great to have you back on the show. This is a little bit of a different take than the last one we discussed with you. This is, you're saying, basically just phony, that all the users, or not all of them, but a lot of them are fake. So how many is it, and how'd you figure this out?
Sure. So close to all of the users are fake, which would mean close to all the revenue is fake. But yeah, what we did here was we examined the company's own data. It was accessible if you sign up for classes, and so we signed up for classes, over 200 classes, and there are files that you can download if you use Chrome developer tools, and so we found those files and downloaded them, and that gave us 54,065 unique users, and we looked for bot patterns within them, and we found 3 patterns that of signing in that are clearly bots. So one of those patterns is the precise joiner pattern. So that is when a user, and these classes are held once a week generally, these are K through 12 classes. So when a user signs in at the same exact second on more than one, on 2 or more occasions. So that to us is just improbable. And to us, it means that there was code written to send that user into the class at that time. Then we also have GSX linked IP addresses. So the data that we were able to obtain, it shows who the tutors, the GSX tutors and the GSX teachers are. So they are employees of GSX. But when we see students or purported students that share those IP addresses, and we found 15,000 of those, roughly, out of our 54,000. That indicates a problem. Then the third pattern are what we call burst joiners. So this is when, within the same second, 10 or more students or 10 or more users sign in. Now, to be conservative, we excluded from that count users who joined either in the 5 minutes before each class or the 5 minutes right after each class started. So that gave us, between those 3 bot behaviors, that gave us about 73% of the users in our 54,000 user sample were bots. Then we identified a 4th pattern called the early joiner, which we said, and we think this is also very company favorable here, that if a user joins more than 30 minutes before a class starts, then we'll deem that very likely a bot. And that took us to over 80%. Now, just to also give you some context here, the overlap in bot behaviors is significant. So most of, or I'd say a significant portion of these identified bots exhibited not just one, but multiple bot behaviors, and about a third of them exhibited all 3 bot behaviors. So, or the 3 high confidence bot behaviors. So that tells us that, yeah, these are substantially fake users. And the final piece there is we actually spoke to a former manager from GSX who explained in detail how the bot operations work, and yeah, that this, corroborated our analysis. So it's, we have zero doubt.
I want to get to that.
Yeah, so we have zero doubt
so
that the vast majority of these users are not real.
And you put that high confidence at about 80% of the users. I want to just make sure that we get the response in too here as we have this conversation. We're going to come back and talk about the manager that you spoke with. But the company says they already put out a statement that's available for anyone online at the investor room on the company's website. They say that in analyzing the report, they believe that Muddy Waters lacks a basic understanding of GSX's operations, even though they respect your efforts. So, Carson, just the one thing that kind of is weird to me, why would a company have their purportedly fraudulent data readily available for download? Did they just not expect anybody would look into it? It kind of just seems odd that it would be so obvious and available to anyone.
Well, so a few things. I've been doing this next month it'll be 10 years since I've been publicly shorting companies. And the first couple of years were almost entirely China frauds that, similar to GSX, invented, 90%-ish plus of revenue. And every single time, and 6 of those companies have been delisted that we identified. And every single time they came back with the same type of response. You don't understand our company. You don't understand our industry. We do. That's not the issue. Now, why would they leave that data hiding there? It's really funny. I mean, when you look at the sheer incompetence, well, okay, so one problem with fraud, especially major fraud, is that we're fond of saying one lie needs 100 to conceal it. So when you start spinning these massive but intricate webs of lies, there are always things that you cannot lock down. And this is not a fraud that is carried out. I mean, the mastermind is not the people who code the system, and there are a few real users, but they're not the people who code the system and the software. And I mean, my best guess is they set it up in a way that's convenient for them on the back end I'm talking about the people who actually code this, to get data and to continue doing their work. But this is Chairman Chun. I mean, if he knew about this, he probably would have said, no, we need to do this some other way. So somebody who's not ostensibly in on the fraud or massively benefiting from the fraud, more like a team of people, they just set this up in a way that would be fine if this were a legitimate business. But that's the problem when you have a small coterie of very senior people who are running a complete fraud. How do you get everybody else to, help you cover it up without saying to them, hey, we're committing fraud here, and then having this discussion with them about how they can benefit from it. So that's my best guess as to why the fruit was relatively low-hanging. Although that said, it took a lot to analyze the data, to be fair.
Sure. Yeah, Carson, you're not, looking at a company here that nobody covers. I mean, there's about a dozen analysts from J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Nomura, Barclays, Credit Suisse. If this is indeed the case, then there's a lot of Wall Street analysts from big shops that are wrong and saying that investors should buy the stock. I know that you spoke with a former employee. According to your report here, is this a person that is being compensated by Muddy Waters in any way? Is there any incentive that viewers should know about that he would have to talk to you guys? He or she?
No, and he did not know. And to be clear, he did not know he was speaking with Muddy Waters. So,
okay.
No, he was, yeah, so he didn't know he was talking to us. So, yeah, that's, that was not,
Got it.
There's certainly, look, again, we've been doing this 10 years. We get the whole thing of, obviously be a problem if you were, if we were opening up to a potential source, and, certainly if we gave them economics, if they told us what we wanted to hear. So that's not it at all. But
okay.
I'm
appreciate the clarity.
Surprised at how frank he was, but I mean, there could, it's possible there's some bad blood between him and the company, but, he didn't tell us anything that was inconsistent with the data that we had.
Okay. Carson, we're running out of time, but just to wrap things up here, I mean, you're basically saying that the fake users translate into the vast majority of the revenue, 90%. So I'm guessing that means you think the stock is basically a zero. Can you give me an idea how you're shorting it? Or is it are you true shorting, borrowing shares and selling them? Or are you owning options on puts? How long do you think this thing takes to unravel?
No, we're short the shares. I mean, we're not the first to come out and state that it's a fraud. So the implied volatility on the options is it's ridiculous. It's through the roof. So I don't think an option strategy really makes sense here. But we're directionally short. We're hedged against that position by being long triple Q. It's not a great hedge, but it's somewhat of a hedge. It's working out well today. Okay. But that's how does it play out? Look, sometimes these things play out really quickly. Sometimes they seem to be holding up, and then all of a sudden, boom, bottom falls out. That's the luck in coffee. Other times it's a slow bleed, and there are ups and downs. So we're just going to keep the pressure on, and there's a political backdrop to this that is really important also. I mean, it seems like policymakers are finally getting tired of the frauds from China, and there was a Senate bill that passed today that that could impact the listing status of these companies writ large. So there's a lot going on here. It'll be volatile, and the final thing I would say is if somebody wants to be directionally short, in addition to trying to hedge the beta, it should be a very, very small position relative to your total trading account, because I do expect volatility.